Okay, take two. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Lamecca Holmes. I'm the director of the East Flatbush Community Partnership, and you are joining us today for our monthly meeting for the month of August. Our agenda is packed today. We have some great presentations lined up. We're going to have our East Flatbush Community Partnership updates. We have a presentation from Abraham Tahida, New York City Commission on Human Rights. Another presentation from LeVar Nero from Sun River Health. Adam Cruz is going to be presenting from Europe, New York, Neighborhood Care. We'll have our program updates and then conclude with next steps. So I'll start by sharing some of the past events we had. FYI, Cindy will be joining soon. She actually just finished up at an event. We've been really busy this month. So I had the pleasure of attending a back to school giveaway that was hosted by the Pentecostal Church of God on August 20th. Last Saturday at 11 o'clock, we were able to actually distribute 100 backpacks to them, which were fully supplied, and those were donated by New York Cares. And I must say that I was really blown away by the event and just how well organized it was. Everyone who volunteered was so pleasant and just had such a servant heart. I know Tyrone was there and he emailed me after and had the same sentiments. So I'm so grateful to have been able to attend that event. It went very well. And they gave away, I want to say, over 300 backpacks. So it was very successful. A second event that we participated in was a community block party held on April 20th as well at 1 o'clock. And this event, we did give backpacks also. It was hosted by the Hope Center Development Corporation. The next event that we just had yesterday was our Mind, Body, Soul Street Connect. This is where we gave away laundry cards to residents for the Clean Right located on 1205 Flatbush Avenue. We also were able to give them laundry detergent, fabric softener, the sheets when you put your clothes in the dryer, we gave them those as well. And that event went well also. So this is the event that Cindy attended today. It was a community baby shower, and it was sponsored by Empire, Blue Cross, Blue Shield. And I'm assuming that event went well. Everything that we partake in because of our wonderful partners does go well. So that was an event that happened today at 12 p.m. We have some upcoming events. Our East Flatbush Community Partnership, as well as LEAP at JCCA, is collaborating to have a back to school extravaganza that is going to be held on September 1st at 3 p.m. And we will be giving backpacks away as well. We received 500 backpacks from New York Cares. So we're excited about that and looking forward to it. Okay, so at this time, if you have just joined us and didn't have a chance to introduce yourself in the chat, please feel free to do that. Let us know if you are a resident of East Flatbush or if you are a service provider and which organization you're representing. At this time, I'm going to introduce our first presenter, Abraham Tahida. I hope that you, please forgive me if I pronounce your last name wrong. Abraham is the Associate Human Rights Specialist at New York City Commission on Human Rights. Abraham?
Sorry, I have two mute buttons. Good afternoon, everyone. You mispronounced it a little bit, but it's all right. Everybody does that. Abraham Tejeda. It's cool. I get it. It's tough. And I work for the New York City Commission on Human Rights. I know many of you are probably familiar with my agency already. But for those who are not, I guess I can speak a little bit more about what we do, right? So now's a good time for me to just jump into it. Okay. So the Commission on Human Rights is New York City's anti-discrimination agency. And the purpose of our agency is to enforce the city's anti-discrimination law and also educate people about their rights and obligations under that law. So if anybody in this space or if any of your clients ever felt like they may have experienced discrimination, you can reach out to the commission. We have attorneys on staff. Those attorneys can investigate the allegation of discrimination. If we can prove that the employer, the landlord, the business discriminated against you, We may be able to take legal action against them in the city's Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings, which is basically the city's local court system. And through that system, we may be able to levy civil penalties, which are basically fines that would the entity would have to pay to the city for violating the city's law, or we may be able to recover damages, which is money that would be paid out to the person who experienced the discrimination for any financial loss that they experienced. Other things that we may be able to do is try to get that job for a person if they were denied for a job based on discrimination. Get that person into housing if they lost a housing opportunity because of discrimination. Order the entities to undergo training to make sure that they understand how to comply with our law. So these are all some different outcomes that could happen when you come to our agency. Because we're a city agency, all of our services are free. So, no one needs to, do anything and to pay anything when coming to us. All you have to do is reach out to us, report the discrimination, make sure that whatever you're reporting falls under what our law covers, and we can investigate and go after that entity. Now, the way that the city's law works, right? Everything is not considered discrimination. In order for us to get involved in something, it has to be discrimination as it's defined under our law, right? So, and our law, unfortunately, does not cover everything. It is one of the broadest and strongest anti-discrimination laws in the country. However, there are a lot of things that folks may experience that they feel are wrong, but may not be considered discrimination. The way that we determine whether something's considered discrimination or not is based on the specific jurisdictions which our law applies, and also the protected classes under our law, right? So the discrimination has to happen within one of the jurisdictions that we cover, and it has to happen based on the protected classes under the law, which we'll talk about in a second. When we talk about jurisdictions, I've mainly been talking about them. We're talking about things like employment is a jurisdiction, right? Whenever a person is looking for a job, if a person is already working somewhere, that's the context of employment. When we're talking about employment, we're talking about any employer in New York City that has four or more employees. All the employees do not have to be in New York City. The business does not have to be based in New York City. And those are the types of employers that we would cover, right? We're talking about every stage of the employment process, whether it's job advertisements, whether it's job interviews, um, availability of accommodations on the job, the way that people are paid, the opportunities for promotions. All those things are considered the realm of employment, and we can cover discrimination in those areas. The next major area is housing, which is similar, right? It's wherever you live or wherever you're trying to live, right? If you're looking for a place to live, and I'm going to talk about a few types of specific discrimination that we're seeing a lot. Those are also areas you can bring to us. Same kind of thing. We cover advertisements for apartments. We cover pretty much anybody who works on behalf of a landlord or a management company, whether it's a real estate agent, a broker. We can actually hold newspapers liable if they have discriminatory advertisements in the newspaper. We can hold managing agents and management companies accountable for discrimination. So we cover all that kind of stuff as well. And of course, we also cover people who are already tenants also. The last major area is something called public accommodations, which is basically just a fancy word for public places. We're talking about any place where a person goes to get a product or a service. So, city agencies can be considered public accommodations, right? Stores, movie theaters, restaurants, parks, transit options, right? In all these different spaces, everybody's supposed to be treated the same. And if people are being discriminated against based on those things that are covered under our law, then you can also reach out to us and get help for that as well. We also cover discrimination in two other areas that are a little bit different. One of them is discriminatory harassment, which basically means discrimination that happens outside of those first three areas. We're talking about, at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of stuff in the media about anti-Asian bias. So a lot of that stuff would fall under the category of discriminatory harassment. We could be talking about graffiti that's racist or that uses slurs. We could be talking about street harassment, so harassment on the subway by people in the subway, strangers in the street. So we can cover those things as well to a limited degree. We always encourage people, if there's violence or a threat of violence involved, to report it to the police department. But we ask that people do report those types of incidents to us, because we are the only body that's keeping track of how much bias or discrimination is happening in the streets. And if we don't know about what's happening, then we don't have an accurate idea of how much, particular groups or types of people are being targeted. And the last area that we cover is bias-based profiling by law enforcement, which basically means if you feel like a police officer targeted you based on some of those protected classes, you can reach out to us. We don't have the power to fire the officer, but we can investigate and try to corroborate what happened to you. Now, again, right, when we talk about discrimination, it's only discrimination if it's based on our protected classes, right? So I've been talking for a minute, so I'm gonna turn it back to everybody else for a second, right? You can feel free to unmute, or you could drop an answer in the chat. But I want you to tell me what you think some of the protected classes are. What are some of those things that you think the law covers when we talk about discrimination? Like, we're talking about parts of our identity, parts of who we are. Like, what do you think some of the things that are covered under the city's law are? Like, what, like, why do people discriminate, and which one of those things do you think are covered under the law? So I see
I,
gender and age,
I
disability,
think pregnant women.
pregnancy, absolutely right. So gender, age, absolutely covered. Disability, pregnancy, right? Race, right? Huge one. Race is covered. hmm Can we think of any other ones? Gender, race,
I have
age.
a question. What about immigration status, like discrimination against immigrants or people who speak a foreign language, things of that nature?
Yes. So I think somebody yelled one out real quick before you, but yeah, immigration status is
Oh, they
also
did.
covered. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. So people who are undocumented, right? People who are not citizens, they have rights under our law. You can come file a complaint with us. We've had cases related to those issues where people who are undocumented are experiencing workplace harassment, are experiencing harassment in their housing, right? Landlords or employers are threatening to call like ICE on someone, right? That's discrimination under our law, right? Just because they're undocumented, just because they're not citizens, doesn't mean that they don't have rights in New York City. And that's absolutely something that's covered. I see sexuality, right? I see social class. So social class and income are not covered, but I'm glad that you mentioned those, right? Because sometimes we think that they are. I wish that they were, right? I'm a city employee, right? So we not in the highest social class or making the most money. But unfortunately, people can sometimes be treated differently based on their income or their social stat class. And generally speaking, that's not discrimination, even though there is sort of one area related to income that I will be talking about a little bit later. Um, I also see weight, right? So weight is also one that is not covered unless you can connect it to a disability, right? So when we talk about disability, we're talking about all types of medical conditions. They could be mental, physical, emotional, right? And pretty much any medical condition. It can be a temporary condition, a permanent condition. If your weight is connected to that disability, that is an area where we might be able to cover it. But other than that, no, it is not covered. Hair is covered, right? So hair protections were added in 2019. So as a result, people wearing their natural hair, their afros, their locks, their braids, other hairstyles, right, are protected. And employers are not permitted to tell people to cut their hair or to change their hairstyles anymore under the law. So those are sorts of discrimination that are very common with certain groups and are no longer permitted. I also see creed and religion, right? So yes, right, religion falls under the category of creed under our law, which is pretty much any belief system. So no matter what your belief system is, it is covered under our law. Whether you're an atheist, maybe you're a Muslim, Jewish, no matter what your belief system is, you are protected. You shouldn't be treated differently based on your religion. And when we talk about creed or religion or disability, people are entitled to reasonable accommodations under the law. And basically, what that means is that they can ask for adjustments to the workplace, adjustments to policies in the workplace that makes it easier for them to navigate with their particular religious beliefs or with their disability.
Yeah.
I see labor. I see labor has her hand up. I don't know if you still have a question you want to ask or. Okay, no. Well, in the chat, I also see criminal history, right? That's also a big one. Um, so the law under our law, we have something called the Fair Chance Act, which basically means that employers are not allowed to discriminate against people based on their arrest or conviction record. So most employers are not allowed to ask people about their conviction history until after a job offer has been extended. And so after they've determined that that person is a suitable fit for that job, in that situation, the employer is allowed to ask the person about their background. They are allowed to sort of determine if that person is appropriate for the job, but they have to comply with what is called the fair chance process, which basically means that the employer needs to look at all the factors surrounding that person's conviction history, how long ago the conviction happened, the age of the person at the time of the conviction, the things that the person has done since their conviction, right? Like if they've done a bunch of things that kind of show that they've moved forward in their life, those are things that the employer has to consider. Keeping a job, staying away from police contact, going back to school, obtaining other certifications, obtaining substance abuse treatment if that was part of the criminal history, obtaining anger management services if that was part of the criminal history. Those are things that the employer has to take into account. And if the employer does decide that they need to deny that person that job because of their history, the employer needs to explain in writing how it is that that person's conviction history has a direct relationship to the job, and how it is that or how it is that that person's conviction history means that they would pose a risk to people or property in that business. And the employer has to assess those different factors that I mentioned to make sure that they don't mitigate that risk, and they need to explain why it is that they cannot hire that person very specifically. The employer also has to give the applicant a copy of any background check that they perform on them. So if they ask them to submit fingerprints, they need to give the applicant a copy of of that background check and whatever those fingerprints produced. And they also have to hold that job open for 5 days to allow the person time to respond to whatever is in that denial. Now, when we talk about discrimination, like I said, New York has one of the broadest laws in the country. So I don't have enough time today to talk about all of them. But if anybody would like, I would love to come out and do a presentation, a full length presentation, and talk about a lot of the protected classes or talk about discrimination in housing or in a particular area or type of discrimination. But I do want to talk about a few kinds that I'm sure will come up before I leave. So first, right, before income was mentioned, right? So broadly, income is not covered under our law. However, one type of discrimination that we're seeing right now that is very, very common falls under one of our protections, which is called lawful source of income discrimination. Lawful source of income discrimination refers to people who have vouchers or programs. So people who have programs like Section 8, FEPS, HASA, other programs that people use that allow them to help pay their rent or to move out of shelter. It's illegal under city law for landlords to deny people housing just because they have a program or a voucher. So this is a situation where income uh, is sort of protected, right? If you have a voucher, that voucher is supposed to be considered part of the applicant's income, right? Many landlords ask applicants for housing for apartments, for example, if we're talking about renting, to have 40 times the rent as their annual income. If the person is receiving a voucher, the housing provider cannot use that 40 times the rent calculation, because obviously the voucher is going to be paying a significant portion of that person's rent, whether it's 1/3 or 2/3 or the entire rent in some cases. And the person obviously does not have 40 times the rent if they are receiving that voucher. So that's a situation where income is covered, but other than that, there isn't really a situation where income is covered. Um, but essentially, landlords who are denying people just because they have these programs or having a preference for these programs are in violation of the law. And people can reach out to us and report landlords, report real estate agents who do not want to rent to people or do not want to work with people who have vouchers or programs, and we can go after them and try to make sure that they aren't doing that. Um, this is an issue because many people in our shelter system are receiving these programs and vouchers, and because they're not able to secure housing, it sort of keeps them trapped in the shelter system, and it also prevents that the space in the shelter system from being freed up for other people who need to go into shelter as well. um Also, right, before I mentioned weight as not being covered, right? Another thing that's not covered, but I want to talk about a little bit more is sort of like your general appearance, right? So if we're talking about how people dress, you know, your hair is covered in a way, your hairstyle, but like how you dress, the clothes that you wear are not a protected class under our law unless they are related to your creed, right? Your belief system, right? In that case, they would be protected. Like people as part of their belief systems may have to wear certain types of clothing, right? The workplace should make accommodations for people if there are clothing policies in that workplace to allow them to wear the clothing that complies with their religious belief. So that is a situation where clothing would be covered. Also, I spoke a little bit before about reasonable accommodations for people based on religion and disability. There are also reasonable accommodations for people who are pregnant. So, if a person in the workplace is pregnant, they can ask for accommodations to their work situation that makes it easier for them to navigate their work responsibilities, provided that they can still perform sort of the major functions of that job. There shouldn't be any issues, but we're talking about things like maybe a slight change in the duties of that job. If the person cannot lift heavy boxes anymore, it may mean allowing that person to visit the restroom more frequently. It may mean finding a seat for that person, right? So that way that person doesn't have to stand during the whole day. These are all accommodations that could exist, but based on a person's pregnancy. Yes, somebody mentioned hijab and Sikh headwear. So those are examples of religious clothing that, under our law would be protected, right? An employer cannot tell you to take off your religious clothing. Some other types, other protected classes that are covered that I think are important for this group. There's a protected class when we talk about employment for caregivers, right? So if you are a caregiver, meaning you are a parent, you're somebody who takes care of somebody else who has a disability, right? A family member. It could be a sibling, a parent, a grandparent, a child, a spouse, right? You are protected under our law. The law is not as specific as to what accommodations you can request, but it does say that people who are caregivers should not experience discrimination just because they're caregivers, and they should have access to the same accommodations that other employees in that workplace have access to. So if there's flexible scheduling in this workplace, the person who's a caregiver should also have access to flexible scheduling. If that workplace sometimes accommodates people and allows them to have certain days off or to leave early on certain days, those options should also be in consideration for the caregiver if the caregiver needs them as well. Um Also, right, when we talk about housing on the note of family and caregivers, there's also protection for families with children. So a landlord is also not allowed to deny people housing just because they have kids, right? So advertisements that say no kids, if if you were to visit an apartment or speak to a housing provider and they want to ask you about the ages of your children or they have preferences for the ages of your children, these are also types of discrimination that are prohibited under the law. The housing provider can deny you based on the size of your family being inappropriate for the size of the apartment. Let's say a family of 10 trying to be in a two-bedroom apartment, but they cannot deny you just because you have children, right? Like just point blank, you have kids, I don't like them, or I only want kids if they're older than 13, or I only like kids that are younger than 13, right? Whatever the arbitrary preference is, that would also be illegal under our law. Um, we also cover credit discrimination in employment, right? So employers are not allowed to ask about credit history. Employers are not allowed to ask about salary history anymore. And later on this year, we're gonna be having a protection for salary transparency going into effect. So I'm struggling to remember the correct date, but I can find it for everyone. But later on this year, it will be required under the law for employers to publish the specific salary ranges for jobs. They will not be allowed to sort of hide that from anyone anymore. So that's something to be on the lookout for and to pay attention to. And if you continue to see advertisements where or publishings where employers are not listing those salary ranges, that's something you may want to bring to our attention. I saw somebody mention marital status when interviewed. Yeah, that's also something, right? Marital status is a protected class, whether you're single, married, widowed, divorced, no matter what your marital status is, you're covered under our law. And yeah, it's definitely not something that should be coming up during the interview. Generally, when we talk to employers, because we also do these presentations for employers, we encourage them not to ask any questions about any protected classes. um, because it sort of raises the possibility that a person could be discriminated against. Interview should be about why you're the best qualified person for the job, not, you know, your gender expression, right? Not if you're, trans people are covered under our law when we talk about gender. So like not, the fact that a person may be trans, it shouldn't be about whether you're married or single, or if you're gonna have kids soon, or what your race is, if you're racially ambiguous. The interview should be about why are you the best person for the job. We know that sometimes those questions come up and it's not necessarily discrimination, but we encourage people, not to ask those questions. And if you are interviewing and you are getting those questions, just be mindful of like what happens when you answer them, because that could be a red flag that you are being discriminated against, right? Like, because why should your national origin matter? Why should your sexual orientation matter? Those are not criteria that determine your ability to perform a job or not. Um, Also, right? So generally we have a statute of limitations of 1 year for a person to file a complaint with us. There's an exception to that for that when we talk about gender discrimination, for which we have 3 years. So when we talk about gender discrimination, we could be talking about people being treated differently based on them being male, female, trans, gender non-conforming. We could be talking about sexual harassment. So sexual harassment falls under gender under our law. So people, any type of unwanted sexual attention in the workplace, we would have that 3 year statute of limitations for you to reach out to us, and would fall under the category of gender. When we talk about employment discrimination, we could also be talking about unemployment status discrimination. So people being denied jobs just because they haven't worked in a certain amount of time. So a person who's experiencing a period of unemployment, 6 months, a year of unemployment, it's actually against the law for an employer to deny you just because you haven't had employment for a certain amount of time. So that's also something that will be covered under our law. Some other protections, right? Pre-employment marijuana testing. When we talk about employment discrimination, most employers are no longer permitted to conduct pre-employment marijuana testing. So that should not be a screening tool for most of the jobs that people are applying for. The exceptions to that would be jobs where, people are driving vehicles, operating heavy machinery, working on power lines and electric lines, things of that nature. And there are a few other exceptions. But other than that, many of the other jobs, entry level jobs, mid level jobs, office jobs, retail jobs, sales jobs, you know, they shouldn't really be asking people to pass a marijuana test as a condition for employment. So if folks are seeing that, that's also something that I would encourage you to bring to us. So again, like I mentioned, there are many, many protected classes. I could I could definitely keep going, but I would want to stop for questions or thoughts. Anybody who has any questions, and I can drop some information in the chat. Again, I also do these presentations sort of in a longer format with a PowerPoint, um, or without a PowerPoint in a longer format, where we kind of talk about all the different protected classes and try to make sure you understand every part of the law. Or if you're like a housing organization, we could talk just about housing, we could talk just about employment discrimination. I'm also going to post where you can find all of our fact sheets, which list out a lot of these protections, which I talked about, and many of the ones that I did not get a chance to talk about. Um, but yeah, any questions, now is a good time to ask. If not, thanks for having me.
Yeah, how you doing, Abraham? Yeah, thanks for the presentation. So it's always good to have a refresher on the protected class when it comes to discrimination. Now, just a comment, and correct me if I'm wrong regarding creed, because creed can also, even though it's very similar to religion, there are some cases of creed which is not necessarily religious. So let's say, for example, I'm applying for an apartment, and let's say I don't believe abortion should be legal. And let's say, for example, the landlord interviews me and asks me that question. That's also considered part of creed, correct?
I'm not sure. That's actually a really good question. I've never heard that one before.
Yeah, like certain belief systems that may not necessarily be religious that you
I mean, if your political, so the thing is, your political beliefs are not covered.
okay.
However, like what you just mentioned could be connected to somebody's religious beliefs, and religious beliefs are covered, right? And insofar as you're going to be a tenant, like, I still don't see why it would be relevant for sort of a landlord to know that about the tenant, because it's,
Right.
it's sort of like when we talk about employment discrimination, a lot of these questions should not come up, right? The main thing is like, are you a good tenant and can you pay my rent? Right?
Right.
That's about it. Not like, not do you like abortions, do you not like them, are you a fan of them? Like, I'm sure there are probably landlords that would ask stuff like that, but I would think it's like one of those weird questions. I'm not sure if it would be discriminatory or not, but I would definitely encourage the person to reach out to us and find out. But just to be clear, your political views are not covered. So
Okay.
do not wear the I love Trump button to the job interview or to the housing interview, right? Or the I love Hillary, whatever side you're on,
Sorry.
right? Because it is not protected, and an employer can treat you differently based on your political orientation. A landlord could potentially choose to deny you sort of housing based on your political orientation. So I do want to be explicit about that. But I do think it's sort of a strange, the abortion one is a strange question, and I would think, like, let's say a person's opposed to it based on their religion. I don't know if the landlord, the landlord shouldn't be asking that, but I don't know if the landlord
Right.
could deny the person based on that. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
because it's their religion. So yeah.
But thanks.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. I'm gonna ask our law enforcement team about that. So we have a law enforcement team too. I'm part of community relations, but as I mentioned, we also do enforcement. So we have attorneys that investigate all the allegations of discrimination that come before us. And so if those attorneys can prove that you were discriminated against, they're the ones who kind of do that legwork. Again, we're a city agency. This is paid for with your city taxes, so there's no charge to you. You just have to bring it to us. And for an example, right, every case is different. So, but one example, I do a lot of stuff with reentry and working with the Fair Chance Act and people who are formerly incarcerated. We had a case a few years back involving Montefiore Hospital in the Bronx, and I'm struggling to remember if Montefiore was taken over by another hospital system or another hospital system merged with them. But whatever it was that happened, the new management decided that they were going to do background checks on everybody in the hospital. When they did those background checks on everyone, they discovered that a longtime employee, a person who had been working there for about 10 years, had a criminal justice history. He'd been working there for 10 years, no issues. This new management decided that they didn't like the fact that this person had a background. They didn't like what was in their background, and they decided they were going to terminate him, even though he had been working there for 10 years without issue. He came to the commission. We ended up suing the hospital system. We were able to get him $40,000 in back pay, and $70,000 in damages for his mental and emotional distress. So that's one case. Every case is different. I can't promise you a particular outcome. We also had a landmark case many years ago involving a Sikh. I know the Sikh head wraps were mentioned. So for people who don't know, like the Sikhs, you've probably seen them in New York City. You just don't know that they're called Sikhs, but they wear turbans basically. So back in the day, a long time ago, right? Only remember a small portion of this, but not to give anybody's age, I'm sure some of y'all remember. But back in the day, the traffic agents used to be called brownies, right? In New York City, they used to wear brown uniforms. They used to look like UPS workers, sort of. What happened was the traffic department used to be a separate sort of entity in the city. The traffic department ended up being absorbed by the police department, and now the traffic agents are technically part of the police department. They are peace officers. They don't have guns, but they have badges and they have uniforms that are, very similar to the police department, right? And so that uniform includes like the pants, the same pants, like the cargo pants with the pockets. It includes like a similar style shirts. It includes a badge, and it includes a hat, right? An 8-pointed hat. So this person worked for the traffic department. He was Sikh. He used to wear his turban. When the police department took over the traffic department, they enacted this new policy. And as a result, his supervisor told him that he needed to take off his turban and put on the hat. What do you think he did?
I'm assuming he kept it on. He didn't comply.
Right. He refused, right? Because he said, this is my religious belief. I've been working here for years. I'm not going to take off my turban. They ended up writing him up, eventually terminating him because he didn't want to put on the hat. He came to the commission. That ended up being like this huge case. They were forced to give him his job back. We were able to get him back pay as well. I can't remember what the exact amount was. And we were also able to get him compensated some money for damages as well. In that case, he was able to get his job back. In the first case that I mentioned, with the formerly incarcerated person, they were not able to get his job back. I can't remember the exact reason why, but I just know that that was the difference between those two cases. So yeah. Um.
I have a question.
Yes.
It's kind of true. So I'm a pastor, but just so happens to few people around me. So the landlord, we're talking about the landlord and the tenants. So the question the landlord can ask and the question they cannot ask. So this young man, so the landlord has asked him if he's smoking, right? And he said yes. But he asked him go further, so do you smoke weed? And then said they got us want to answer. So, and he came to me saying, Pastor, don't you think that is very discriminatory when they're asking me if I smoke? I say yes, but he's asking me going further if I smoke weed. So the question is, is that part of it that they, I'm a landlord myself, but that question, I don't know. So I think there's an opportunity to just so ask now that we are talking about it.
So when it comes to housing, right, under our law, there's no protection for
Okay.
sort of smoking or whether it's cigarettes or cannabis, right? Under the state law, basically what the state law says about cannabis is that or marijuana, right, weed, people cannot be denied housing or targeted because they smoke weed. However, a housing provider can still prohibit you from smoking
Yeah.
inside their unit, whether it's cigarettes or weed, right? Um, but yeah, so like that's sort of how that works. I don't know, it's not really a lot of protections, right? Like I said, like the landlord can say that they don't want a person that smokes cigarettes at all. Technically, they're not allowed to say that they don't want a person that smokes weed, but they can say that they don't want you smoking weed in their apartment, or in their space. And they can say the same thing for cigarettes, right? Whether they accept cigarette smokers as tenants or not, they can prohibit you from smoking cigarettes in their apartment. If we're talking about renting an apartment, at least.
So another
Um,
part of the question is, I have a couple of them. So in their place of work, I think there is a multicultural area where they work. Some other people wear their traditional dress to work, and then by the time he decided to wear his own like African-related dress to work, he had told me that the supervisor challenged him. Another one is the pastor too on his own privately. So one of these days, just go there with his collar stuff. So that kind of becomes an issue. So I'm in the middle of it, so I'm trying to wrap my head around it. So I don't want to, on both sides. So how does that fit into this conversation?
well, if it's happening the way you just described it to me, right? What I heard you just say is that other people of other groups are allowed to wear their traditional garb,
Mhm.
but this individual who maybe has a different um ethnic origin or national origin is not permitted to wear his garb when he comes to work. Did I understand that correctly?
That's very correct, yes.
So that's discrimination, right? Because if people are allowed to wear their ethnic garb, everybody should be allowed to wear their ethnic garb, right? National origin is a protected class under our law. So this sounds like it might fall under national origin discrimination. It could also fall under race discrimination, possibly. So we have a fact sheet that specifically talks about anti-black racism and race discrimination, and talks a little bit about hair discrimination and clothing discrimination. I'll drop it in the chat, but it could probably be to me it sounds like it could be either one of those. And I think it makes this case is sort of more straightforward because he just has to be able to explain that other people from other groups are allowed to wear their garb and he's not. And that sort of fits the definition of discrimination. You cannot treat groups differently, right? Pretty much everybody should be allowed to wear their ethnic garb if that's permitted in this workplace. There may be situations where ethnic garb maybe may not be allowed for certain reasons, for like safety reasons, certain types of clothing, and there's sort of some space for that argument to be made. But if based on what you're telling me, other groups wear theirs, but he's not allowed to wear his. So if there's a difference between those groups, then that sounds like discrimination to me.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
You mentioned about discrimination around housing. what if a family, when it comes to getting their home appraised, what if they are discriminated against, meaning that their home is appraised less than what it's worth? Would you guys be able to help with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my mistakes that I often make, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, right? And when I do the PowerPoint, I normally don't make that mistake because it's built in. But a lot of times when I talk about housing discrimination, I talk about it from the perspective of renters because many of us are renters. New York City has a lot of renters. But yes, we also have jurisdiction in situations when people are looking to purchase housing. So if you feel like an appraiser is discriminating against you, if you feel like a real estate broker is trying to steer you to certain neighborhoods or steer you away from certain neighborhoods, or you feel like maybe in dealing with a lender or an insurance company, you're getting different rates that you feel are discriminatory, that have nothing to do with your credit worthiness and sort of your financial picture, and have more to do with your race, or other categories. You can definitely reach out to us. You can report those lenders, you can report that real estate broker, you can report that appraiser. There was a recent story in the news lately, which I'm sure that's probably why, one of the reasons why you asked, where I think it's like a professor who studies racial discrimination experienced that, where his home was appraised much less when they removed all the things inside the home that indicated that a black family lived there. So of course, yeah, that's definitely discrimination. These types of discrimination can be a little bit hard to prove, but we know that they exist. And so if you feel like they're happening, yes, please reach out to us, let us know. We can definitely look into that.
Thank you. Abraham, did you have a chance to put your contact information in the chat already?
I'll do that right now, and I know you're waiting for the next speaker. So thank you, everyone. Take care. Feel
Thank
free to reach
you.
out
We
to me.
appreciate your time and all the questions you were able to answer for us. Thank you so much. Okay, Cindy, are you ready to present our next speaker?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Okay, Cindy Reed here, speaking community organizer. And next is LeVar Nerero for regional manager from Sun River Health. I don't see LeVar on. I'm not sure. I haven't received any emails. So maybe we can go with Mr. Cruz.
Wonderful. Adam Cruz actually had to hop for another meeting, but I will definitely be filling in his place. So, we actually do have a PowerPoint that we wanted to share with you all. I believe Adam did send it to you all. Is it okay if we share really quickly?
Yes, you can share.
Let's see. There's one in particular that we want to make sure we share with you. All right, so my name is Courtney. I am one of the recruitment managers for Year Up New York, New Jersey. Adam is currently not present, but he also does the same thing. And we work towards providing our program as a resource to the community, and then working with community partners so that we can source talented young adults that might be interested in our program. So we do have a little warm-up question. You all can feel free to definitely chime in on this question, but if someone would like to come off mute and state their name, whether they prefer customer facing work or behind the scenes work, and what outcomes they in particular would like for their life, then that would be great. If not, feel free to just share in the chat too as we move along. Any takers? Okay, that is a-okay. We can just stick to the chat and I'll move along with the presentation. All right, so our Year Up program is a program that targets.
I can participate if you like. I mean, I was trying to unmute myself.
Sure, go right ahead.
Can you go back to the question?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so my name is Selena. I prefer customer facing work because I feel like just the personal touch is so much. When you have someone in front of you actually speaking with you and getting the information, you're kind of like building a relationship with that person. And what outcomes would I like to see for my life in general, or just in regards to work?
It could be in work, in general, whatever you feel you want to pursue for yourself.
I don't know yet. I can't even, I got stuck. I got brain fart on that one.
Okay.
I got a lot of ideas, a lot of ideas. Don't want to
Yeah.
put too much time.
No worries at all. That's fine. If you do think of it, you can always put in the chat. We'd love to see it. But yes, our program is specifically designed for young adults ages 18 to 29. So we connect them with the skills and the experience that they might need to now find jobs in business, finance, and tech. So we're understanding that there's a lot of talent out there. Our young adults are very skilled, they're very motivated and ready to start careers, but the opportunity that they receive, it's not divided evenly. So we're here to kind of bridge that gap and be of service to young adults in that way by giving them the networking opportunities that they otherwise might not have gotten if not for the program. It is a free program, and we will definitely talk about more of the resources that we do offer to our young adults that are part of the program. So we're nationwide. We're not just located in New York, New Jersey. Pretty much in any major city in the US, you can find a Year Up location. We're not everywhere, unfortunately, but we're looking to expand in so many different places, and we're excited to announce that we'll be in Detroit as well. So yeah, it's something that's in the process, and we really want to touch everywhere around the nation where there is a need. So that's 29 campuses across the US. Students coming through our program, they're expecting to make more than 44,000, so around 47,000 in our New York, New Jersey location. And this is just coming through the program and going through the trainings and graduating within 4 months. So that's a big deal, because I know that a lot of us know sometimes it can take up to a year to actually find a job that you want. Sometimes it does take time. So knowing that our students coming through the program, about 90% of them, this number has actually grown, are actually receiving jobs within 4 months of graduating our trainings, or they're pursuing higher education if they haven't already. So a starting salary of about 47,000 or more, that's amazing, especially as, a lot of adults now are still working towards finding a salary at this range. So we're looking to be able to provide them even more of a leverage. And the world is their oyster after that. They've gone through the program, they can pursue their degree. So it's definitely a lift up for them. So this is our eligibility requirement. So as I mentioned, 18 to 29 years of age, they do need a high school GED or diploma and be eligible to work in the United States. So whether this is a green card, whether it's a permanent residency, temporary visa, we do support DACA students. They just need to be able to employ these skills that they've learned into work, because we're not just teaching them the skills, we want to connect them with the jobs also. It is a full-time program, so I won't sell it short. It's an extensive program, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. It's definitely a commitment, but students coming through the program are getting quite a bit out of this program. So we'll get more into that in the further slides. We do ask that they live within the commuting distance of the Year program, no more than an hour, 15 minutes out. We're located at Wall Street, 85 Broad Street. So wherever they are in New York City or parts of New Jersey, we just want to make sure that they're able to come to our location and get there in a good given amount of time. Fully vaccinated, according to New York City mandate, we do ask that our students are fully vaccinated, as our internship partners are requesting that they are, and have not obtained a bachelor's degree. So at the moment, we only support individuals who have a high school graduate, GED diploma, or associate's degree. If they do have a bachelor's degree, a lot of it is weighed on a case-by-case basis. Let's say they have an international degree, we could potentially support, but the goal here is to be able to teach them something. So if they already have a bachelor's degree, then it wouldn't be quite setting them up for success for a program where you're starting off with something more entry level. So, and then I will break down this program for you all. It is 3 different phases. So you'll get our learning and development phase, which is up to 6 months of training. This is dependent on the track that these students choose, but in the training, they'll learn professional development skills. They'll learn public speaking skills. They will learn how to be professional and show up in a workplace setting. In our second phase, they'll then be connected with an internship. So this is something whereby if they successfully complete their trainings, then they will definitely be connected with a corporate internship. We partner with lots of different Fortune 500 companies, and they're able to use the skills that they've learned towards potentially being hired by that internship site that they work at. And if they're not hired, then we do have employment opportunities that we pass over to them. And if they want to pursue higher education, maybe that's their route, then we do have resources to support. So we make it our mark to support the student wherever they're at and wherever they see themselves going. And this also includes with their own track specific training as well, which we'll get into the next slide. And so we've got 2 tracks in technology, 2 tracks in finance, and then 1 in business fundamentals. So application development, it's the more advanced of the 2. Any students interested in coding, debugging, app testing, creating apps might want to do the application development and support, end up with careers like UI, UX design, junior developing. Then we've got our second tech track, which is IT help desk. So students who want to learn how to troubleshoot computer issues for organizations, simply put, and they can have careers in help desk working for lots of different tech organizations. We also have investment operations. So any students that are interested in stocks and bonds, they want to process wires and trades, work with wealth managers, that would be a good track for them. It's also the more advanced finance track. And then we have consumer banking, which is anyone who wants to work as a branch manager, a bank teller, selling some sort of financial service. They can expect to be a personal banker at a bank. And then we have business fundamentals. This is specifically for students that are enrolled in college. So it's actually a very special track. We partner with a lot of CUNY schools to offer this program to them. It's something whereby if they're business majors, economics majors, a small liberal arts major, they can potentially join this business fundamentals track. And it's more so some supplemental skill and experience so that they'll get that internship and that career experience coupled with the degree that they'll be receiving so that it's giving them more of a cushion when they're graduating school and looking for work. So to break it down further, we've got our Wall Street campus. All of our tech programs, all of our finance programs will all be at our Wall Street campus. College option is something whereby if they're interested in the business fundamentals track or they're interested in tech, then they can complete this college option at their respective colleges because it's mostly online for those students with a few in-person touch points. So it follows their college schedules for the most part. The schools listed are the ones we currently partner with. We're looking to expand that list, of course. But yes, we do support students that also are looking towards getting degrees as well. So any students interested in our application development program, it's from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. All other programs are from 8:30 a.m. to 3:30. So application development and information technology, they can expect to be Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Finance and college option will be somewhere between 8:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. And this is our college schedule. So again, we design this college option schedule for students who are already enrolled in school. We keep our year program classes somewhere towards the morning so that they're free to take their afternoon classes for college. This schedule is not flexible. It cannot be moved or permeated in any way, but we do work with our college partners so that, let's say a student potentially has a class at 9:30 and they want to do the program and there's a schedule conflict, we can potentially work with those college partners to switch their courses around so they can fully commit to the program. And so the internship schedule will also trend the same. It's going to be Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. full time. And so we we'll get into how we place students in internship in the next slide. These are a few of the places we actually partner with at the moment or have partnered with in the past. And as you can see, it's a lot of different cool places. And the way that we take this into account is we analyze the student's professional brand, where they see themselves, where they want to go a few years from now, the environment they want to work in, the skills that they have, the strengths that they want to grow in, and their commutes. So we want to make sure they're not taking more than an hour to get anywhere to an internship. So it's not something that students choose, but we do match them according to, you know, where they see themselves professionally. And so that's how we go about our internships. And so a few of the support we do offer, students do earn educational stipends here in this program. So $200 in the training portion, $600 in their internship portion. So it's not a living wage, we say, but it is something to reward them for their commitment to the program. Any students who are enrolled in the program and potentially want to go to college at a certain point in time can earn college credits from our program. They'll be receiving professional development in the meantime as well. We've got lots of coaches and mentors that support their advancements as well. We have learning communities which consist of their peers. It consists of staff who also double as mentors and coaches to really cheer them on along their way and offer any kind of support and resources as well. So this program is nothing short of services and resources for students, especially as we do have a whole team dedicated to social services for students, whether that's academic, mental, financial. We're using these things to pretty much move them along their process of going through trainings, internships, and then being successful beyond. And to give you a further breakdown, our $200 a month training portion stipend is something they will receive based on meeting all training expectations. So arriving on time, showing up to their courses, things of that nature. They will receive a contract, and the contract is something they'll have to adhere to make sure they're getting that $200 a month. Same for the internship portion. It is all given to students based on the meeting of expectations of the program, being involved in the program, making certain deliverables, showing up on time, dressing professionally, things of that nature. Because essentially, they're showing up to a full-time job. So we treat it as such, and we're giving them the incentive to work hard and definitely deliver as strong as they can. And so with all of these things being said, we take all these into account to find them success in their careers. So we work with employment placement. We pass over job opportunities for students who might not get hired by their internship sites because it's not guaranteed, of course. We help with higher education plans, and then they're part of our alumni network. So as we're nationwide, they never know who they might meet. Networking and connection is really big in this organization. And there are so many people that really are placed around the nation that can assist the young adults while they're part of the program. So that's what this alumni network does for them. It gives them a familiar face no matter where they go that can always connect them and assist with further opportunities. So the application process, students do have to fill out an application. It consists of about 10 short answer questions like their name, the school they graduated, where they live, their phone number, things like that. And then there is an essay portion. This essay portion is only used to get a better idea of who they are, what they want to do in the program, and the kind of skills that they want to bring into the program. So a lot of students get stuck here, but it's something whereby it only needs to be about a paragraph. So 5 sentences on why you want to be a part of the program, what your skill set is, what track you're interested in. And then once they finish the application, a staff member interviews with them to get a better idea on what ways we can support. And then if they're offered acceptance, it's their decision to accept us, and then the onboarding process begins from there. So I will actually stop sharing this because there is a unique code that my colleague Adam did provide, and you all can feel free to share with anyone that you might know could potentially be interested. But I don't mind taking any questions if you all have any at the moment while I pull this up.
I have a question. What determines the age of what you target? Like you said, 18 to 29. What can be 18 to 30? You know, what determined, like, how did you determine that age group?
That's a good question. So our age group has changed quite a bit over the years. I believe it started off as 17 to 24, and then they made it around 18 to 26. And just recently, we increased the age to 29. So we're seeing that, due to the pandemic, there is just an increasing need beyond just what we might consider a younger adult. I'd argue that someone between the ages of 27 to 29 is also a young adult, and we're just not finding the same opportunities that we might have found years ago for people in that age range. So that's how it's been determined, is where do we see most of a need across ages, and how do we tackle that so that we're being inclusive and we're providing everybody the opportunities that they need. So yes, it's something whereby a lot of what we do is on a case-by-case basis. So you could potentially see someone who's 30 enrolled in the program. So long as they applied at the age of 29, there are certain things that we can do to accommodate them. So the goal is to be as inclusive as possible, as I mentioned, and provide this opportunity to as many people. So.
Hi, Courtney. I have a question. What is the percentage of young people that participate in the program and then actually get hired full-time by those companies you mentioned?
Got you. So the percentage of individuals that come through the program, there's a 90% chance that they're going to be connected with something. So whether that is a job, whether that is resources to go to school, whether that is actually being employed by their internship site, they will get something. So I don't have exact data as to what it might be as far as percent rate is for individuals maybe coming through the program and getting hired by their internship site. But I do know that there's a specific amount that our employment team works towards making sure that employees are including students in their roster of employees. So yes, it's great to know that if you're coming through the program, there is going to be something for you, and you're not just gonna get these skills and it go to waste.
How do you get your students? Actually, Lameka, that was my second question for her, but I said, okay, I can't take over. So how do you get your students?
We get our students through a wide array of things. So a lot of it is social media. We are definitely on Twitter, on TikTok, on Instagram. In fact, a year ago, or it might have been maybe a few months ago, a student went viral on TikTok because they joined the Year Up program, and they were very expressive on how it helped them. And that right there was a huge connection to a lot of students that have been applying so far. So not only that, we get it through community partnerships. So my piece, working with recruitment, working with community partners to see if they have a select few of individuals that might be interested in the program and would qualify. So we help support and nurture those individuals as well. A lot of it is word of mouth, huge referral basis. Lots of students coming through the program refer it to their family, their friends. We even have a referral system where they can earn money for referring other family and friends to the program. So I want to say our top 3 is referrals, social media, our recruitment aspect, and of course, word of mouth. Some people just search workforce development program and they're able to see Year Up. So lots of different ways. Those are really good questions. I shared my screen. I apologize for all of my different tabs that I have open, but this is a unique link for any individuals that might have heard of the Year Up program through this online presentation today. I'll also shoot this link in the chat in case you don't have your phone available to scan this, but feel free to share this link with any of your social networks, anybody that you know, any student that you think could benefit from this program. because we know that it's something that will definitely be something that they can use going forward. And it's greatly impactful for a lot of the students that we serve. So I will put that in the chat.
I have another question for you.
Mhm.
What happened if a student tries for the program and was not successful? Is there an opportunity for them to reapply?
There definitely is. So any students that do not qualify the first time around, we encourage them to apply for the next semester because we've been here for about 20 years. We're not going anywhere. We want to see students thrive and do well in the program. So they, yes, can definitely reapply if they weren't accepted the first time around. But then it also depends on the reason they might not have been accepted. It could have been because they aged out of the program. So things like that are done on a case-by-case basis. But if it's something small as they just weren't prepared, they're not ready to start the program, then they can definitely reapply for the next semester. Thank you for that question. I want to share with you all our start dates that we have. We're working on closing a lot of our cycles. September 6th is when our IT cycle starts. So we are working hard to fill in some spots. Those numbers below are the amount of seats that we take for each cycle. Our investment operations track is starting soon in October. We're taking 40 seats. Our banking, client sales and services has already started, and our college option has already started. So these cycles will open back up in the spring of 2023. We operate in the fall and spring. So it's on a rolling basis. Anyone that is not eligible or is not able to apply for this cycle can always apply for the next term. All right, and that's all that I have. Thank you all so much for listening and just giving us an ear. I'm happy to answer any more questions if there is time. I'll also shoot my email in the chat and then provide that link for you all as well. Yes, let me go ahead and share that for you.
Thank you, Courtney.
You're welcome.
Okay, so Courtney's gonna put that information in the chat. And right now it's our time for program updates. So this is where during our meeting, if you have anything you'd like to share about what's going on in your organization, feel free to do so now. You can unmute yourself and we can begin with our program updates.
Hi, this is Charlene Gordon from the New York City Department of Health, Education and Community Partnership Unit with the Division of Environmental Health. And I did put my information in the chat just to let everyone know we have our monthly webinars, and coming up, we will have a slew of webinars that's open to the community that can join us. We present on different environmental home health hazards in our home. So we'll have sessions in various languages, English, Spanish, and Bengali, and Russian coming up in September. And we're always available for you if you need any presentations to the groups that you're working with or your colleagues that needs to learn about different environmental hazards in your home. I'll repost my contact information, and just to let you know that we are here and we are available to present and educate the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlene. Is there anyone else that has a program update?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. So I just want to share a program update with my program. My name is Adar Johnson. I'm the program manager for Brooklyn Networks. All right, currently we are recruiting for our next cycle, which is starting on September 27th. We are a cable training program that gives OSHA 30, 10-hour FST training, as well as Dixie certification to New Yorkers around the 5 boroughs. All right, and it is for free and it's unpaid. We provide all class material as well as rental tools to use for training in the program. We also offer job readiness training and job placement support for up to 2 years after completing the program. Okay, thank you.
Hi, could you share that information with in the chat? If you could put your contact information down below, that would be super helpful.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Liba, did you want to share something?
Hi, good afternoon. This is Liba Friends from the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, the Bureau of Public Health Clinics. Basically, my announcement is just a reminder that our services are free to anyone 12 years of age and older. We provide sexual health services. We have 2 types of visits, screening visits or medical visits. The Fort Greene Sexual Health Clinics also have late nights on Tuesdays from 5 to 7, which is reserved for a screening visit. The difference between a medical visit and a screening visit is that the screening visit is for anyone who simply needs to know their status. That would be someone that's asymptomatic. Then the medical visit is for someone that has signs or symptoms that know that they were exposed to an STI. Then they can go in and get tested and also treatment if it's needed at that time. For the most part, it's a same-day service or same-day treatment. So if you go in and you're diagnosed, you do have the opportunity of getting treatment on the very same day. That also applies to anyone who goes in for testing and tests positive for HIV. Generally speaking, everything is done on the very same day of that diagnosis. In addition to that, we also have some reproductive health services in the form of birth control. In addition to that, we also have our telehealth line, which is open to anyone who may have questions and not really sure where to go with their STI concerns. They can direct some of those calls to telehealth line, which is generally open Monday through Friday as well, 8:30 to 3:30. And those are the hours for the sexual health clinic in general. And that's pretty much it. And for myself, I also do workshops and presentations in the community with respect to sexual health and HIV prevention. I cover PEP and PrEP. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, you should know what it is. So if you're not sure, it might be a good time for us to connect, just even if it's just to ask a question, because PEP and PrEP are 2 additional tools in our toolbox to help fight HIV. The reality is in our communities, Black and brown communities, we are still significantly more impacted by high HIV rates than other communities. So what that's really telling us when we look at the statistics is we're not really fully utilizing the tools that are at our disposal the same way there are for other communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Liba. Tyrone, would you like to share?
Sure. Good day, everyone. Tyrone McDonald from Neighborhood Housing Services of Brooklyn. On September the 8th, we'll be having a virtual webinar on Housing Connect and just all the good tips and also just how to navigate the whole system. I'll post that in the chat, the link in the chat to register. Also, Neighborhood Housing Services is also part of the Homeowner Handbook, and a Homeowner Handbook is a resource for homeowners, and it covers like a whole range of items, whether it's dealing with repairs, energy efficiency, how to handle a fine, what to do about tree removal, all these different things. So you can always pass by office to pick one up, but I'll also post in the link a telephone number if you want to get one, and it's free, open to the public. And lastly, on September the 1st, HPD is actually requiring small landlords, that's people who own, let's say, 2 to 4 units, who actually rent out, to actually register their home with HPD, as well as an individual who may own like an investment property, like a 1 unit, to they're actually encouraging you to register with HPD. All right. That being said, if individuals fail to register with HPD, there will be fines. In addition to that, if the homeowner has a situation with their with their tenant, that may give them problems, or if they don't register. So we want to encourage people to register. I'll put that in the chat. Our website is nhsbrooklyn.org. And thank you. Over and out.
I have a question for you, Tyrone.
Sure.
So the last thing you mentioned, does the homeowner have to register if they're not renting? So I'm just talking about myself. I have a 2-family home, but I'm not renting the second unit. do I need to still register?
You know, that's a good question. I have to look that up and get back to you. That's an excellent question if it's vacant. I have
Well,
to
it's
get
not
back to you.
vacant. I'm
Oh,
just
not vacant, but yeah, you're not renting it out. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. You're not renting it out. I'll get back to you on that.
Thank you.
No problem.
Does anyone else have any program updates? I don't want to get fined, y'all.
Right.
Anyone else have any program updates? Okay. Okay, I think we're all done with that portion. So I'm just gonna go back to our presentation just to wrap things up for today. So if you are not already, please ensure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Our social media handle is East Flatbush Partnership. Our next meeting is going to be September 22nd. And as always, I like to share the zip codes that are in our catchment area: 11203, 11210, 11212, and 11226. So at that time, we are officially done with the meeting, and we're gonna just leave things open for anyone else that had any questions. The last meeting we had, we opened it up for people just to share and connect, and I think some great conversation came from that. So we'll do that again. I'm gonna stop recording at this time, but if you have any questions for anyone that's still on, feel free. And we appreciate you as usual. Thank you for joining us today.
Great.